Hey everybody, welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Ashley and we are going to make two different kinds of vinegar. If you caught my first vinegar making video, that was my first ever experience with the vinegar making process at all. And I made an apple pear vinegar. And one of the things I was thinking at the end of the process was maybe I'd leave the pear out next time because it does start to kind of come apart a lot more than the apple pieces do. But I decided to give the apples another try. And a couple of my pears are a lot more firm. So I thought maybe that would help, but regardless, I want to leave that in there for a more dynamic flavor. Here's my results, still deepening flavor. I've got lots of good SCOBY type activity going on in there. I probably should keep this maybe in a covered cap, but I'm not really sure. So for now, it's just still exposed to the air. It does tend to develop sort of like a film on top, and I feel like it's sort of a protective quality that it has, and it kind of keeps itself protected almost like a cap would. So I actually heard from somebody that has been making vinegar for a long time. If you can let your vinegar develop for 6 to 12 months, the flavor becomes much, much deeper and it changes in a much more robust way. So I'm going to go in big and do a very large quantity with the mindset of I'm going to leave this sit for a really long time. I'm going to periodically use it and taste it and kind of see how things are going and see how it's changing. And then maybe in the fall or something like that, I would start another big batch, so that I can continue to have an ongoing supply of vinegar, still give it that really long aging time. So the first one we're going to do is going to be another apple pear, and I'm going to try to fit it in these gallon jars. I did wash 2. I don't know if I'll need 2, but at least 1. And then I also have some mango, and I thought that it would be kind of fun to try a different kind of vinegar in a smaller quantity. So I'm going to do a mango vinegar. I did crack into one of these yesterday, so I have a pit in the freezer, but I'm going to use the peelings and the pits from 3 more mangoes and do that in the quart. And I'm thinking it's probably going to be too much for that quart, so we might get into a half-gallon jar, but we'll just kind of see how it goes. Unlike the first video where I did more of like a day-by-day, a blow-by-blow on the process, I'll let you know about how long that process took to where it's just going to be sitting strained. One thing I'm going to point out right before I get going is you'll see a lot of different varieties here. I got 2 different varieties of pears, a Bartlett and then another one starting with a V that I can't remember. Some Fuji apples, I think some Gala, and then one called Cosmos. So there's a lot of different varieties, but that was intentional because I wanted to try to give it a nice, well-rounded flavor from lots of different fruit varieties. Okay, I got all the cores pretty much taken out. I just didn't want like the seeds and stuff in there. So instead of going through and cutting with a knife, I have a half teaspoon measure that has a rounded side similar to a fruit baller. And I just use this to kind of scoop it out. If you have something small like that, it works great. And so that's what I did. And if it kind of looked kind of funky in there, I peeled out a little bit more. But for the most part, that's all I did. There is some scrap here that probably would be just fine to go in there, but I decided to leave it out. That'll go to my chickens. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get all this chopped up. If I don't have enough to fill this 3/4 of the way full, which is how much fruit volume you want, then I might just go ahead and throw the extra in the freezer and then collect apple cores as we eat apples over the next couple of days and weeks, and then get another batch going then, just so that I don't have to have a half batch and I can utilize the big jar. And this is really good timing because, like I said, if I were to do another batch in the fall, that's perfect for apple season in our state. And so I would be able to use a lot of the cores and peels from apples that I'm processing to make more vinegar and maybe even a larger volume, and then just kind of let that go. And so if I'm able to utilize the fall harvest and make all my vinegars then and make enough volume, then I won't have to make it any other time of year. it was looking like it was going to be close enough to being 3/4 of the way full for these big jars. And then I just figured I could just put a little less water in if I felt like it was going to be an issue. Plus, when I made my first batch, it actually overflowed, which is very typical for some of my ferments that I probably fill too full. So this way I can avoid the spillage as well, which will be kind of nice. So I'm going to just pause this. I'm going to prepare the mango, and then we'll move on to the next step of adding a little vinegar to start and some filtered water. This one looks a little spotty in the inside there, and I don't really know when making vinegar how much that really matters, how much blemishes matter, because essentially the fruit breaking down, that's kind of like starting the fermentation process. So I'm not really sure. If you have any experience with this, using different less desirable pieces of fruit, please let me know, because that would be great. I decided to try to squeeze it in this jar after all. I'm just gonna use the pits. All right, we are checking in on our vinegars. I've separated out the solid from the liquids. I actually did that a couple of weeks ago. Here is our mango vinegar, and this took a lot longer to get going. I think it's because the mango pits were so tightly packed into the jar that I wasn't able to kind of stir it around and agitate it as much as the other vinegars. And so once I got a lot more serious about agitating it, the vinegar started to develop a lot more quickly. So this actually smells so strongly of alcohols still, whereas this big one here is starting to take on the vinegar smell. And I was just going to kind of check out what's going on the top here. This thing formed, and I'm not sure. I don't really have a lot of experience with scobies. I'm not, whoops, there it goes. I'm not really sure if that is SCOBY or not, but all the vinegars as they are have been developing a film on the top, which is sort of a protective layer. And so what I'm going to do is, after this vinegar sits and becomes much more smelling like vinegar, I'm going to transfer it over into these big bottles that I'm actually reusing. These olive oil came in these bottles. And so I'm going to continue to clean these up. I only have one right now, and it's got a cork top. As we empty those bottles out of olive oil, I will fill them up with our vinegar and just let them sit in these bottles as long as possible. These bottles are so great. They're so thick and durable. They've got a nice tint to them, which is really great for keeping things preserved and protected from light and things like that. So I'm really excited to reuse those glass bottles. So I'm just going to go ahead and put these back in our basement. These can just sit for a while longer. Once they get into the basement, I just sort of loosely put on the cap so they're not actually sitting on there too tightly, just so that they can get that airflow. From what I understand, the alcohol content goes away with exposure to air, and that's what then turns it into the vinegar. So we are just going to keep it going so that it continues that process, and we will hopefully have a lot of vinegar that can be used in all different sorts of ways in our house. And then I do plan, I know I talked about this, but I do plan in the fall to be able to use the scraps from making apple things and then get another batch going. So I should be able to keep a really good routine going where I don't have to buy things from the store. I can just basically use our discard to create this product that we can then use. We use some vinegar. I wouldn't say we go crazy with it. The most vinegar I use in large quantities is for canning, but I'm also buying that because it's at a specific acidity. So for cooking and things like that in the house, this should be great plenty. If you'd like to see more of what comes out of my kitchen, please subscribe, and we will see you soon.